So welcome guys to this channel. If you are new here, hit the subscription button below as we tackle gradient of a line, a Form 2 topic in maths. So gradient is the same as slope. In other words, what is the slope of that line, a line segment? For example, a line segment AB where A has coordinates x1 and y1 and B has coordinates x2 and y2. So we have gradient has the formula change in y coordinates over the corresponding change in x coordinates. The word here corresponding means if you are taking y2 minus y1 over, you again take x2 minus x1. If you started with y2 minus y1, then you say over x2 minus x1. If you started with y1 minus y2, over x1 minus x2. So we are saying gradient is change in y coordinate over the corresponding change in x coordinate, whereby it is the same as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In maths, this symbol here, delta, means change. So sometimes we write delta y over delta x. And change can also be written as dy over dx. It is the same thing. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is just the same thing as delta y over delta x, change in y over change in x, or dy over dx. For example, find the gradient of a line segment AB, where A has coordinates 0, 3, and B has coordinates 2, 9. So we are going to tackle this question. And we know from solution, when we want to do solution, we know that gradient is the same as delta y over delta x. In other words, change in y coordinates over change in x coordinates. So we are saying change in y. So we can take 9 minus 3. The y coordinate here is 9. The y coordinate here is 3. 9 minus 3 over 2 minus 0. We started with 9 minus 3 over, we again take 2 minus 0. Or another student can do this, can say gradient is the same as change in y over change in x. So this one is the same as another student can decide to start with 3, which is still the same. So 3 minus 9 over, starting again with 0 now, 0 minus 2. So this one is the same as 9 minus 3 is 6. 2 minus 0 is 2. And then we have a final answer as 3. And this student here will have 3 minus 9 is negative 6. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is 3. So it doesn't matter what you choose to start with. If you choose to start with the y coordinate of 3 of A, which is 3 minus the y coordinate of B, so long as if you start with the y coordinate of A over, when you come here to the x coordinate, you start again with for A. If you find this video helpful, please hit the subscription button below, and you can share and like this video as we continue. So example 2, we are told find the gradient of a line PQ with coordinates P having a coordinates negative 3 and 3, and Q has coordinates 1 and 1. So we know that gradient is the same as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2, we can decide to choose the y coordinate of either q or p. So I'll decide, may want to choose for p, so it is 3 minus 1 over, because we started with the y coordinate of p, we must again start with the x coordinate of p, which is negative 3 minus 1. So 3 minus 1 is 2 over negative 3 minus negative 1 is negative 4. And we have our final answer as negative a half. Or another student can decide to do this. So another student can say that gradient is the same as change in y over change in x, which is the same thing we said. We said here that gradient is the same as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and y2 minus y1 is the same as change in y, delta y over delta x. So gradient is delta y over delta x. So another student can decide to start with 1. So 1, the y coordinate of q is 1. So 1 minus the y coordinate of p, which is 3, over, because he started with the y coordinate of q, so over, he has to start again with the x coordinate of q, which is 1 minus negative 3. So we know that 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 1 minus minus 3 is the same as 1 plus 3, which is the same as 4. And we have our final answer as negative a half. So regardless of the coordinate you want to start with, the answer will still be the same. So we have example 3. In the figure below, find the gradient of OP. So we have here our Cartesian plane, and we are told that this one is point O, and we have point P here. So we know that the coordinates of point O is 0, 0. And then the coordinates of P, coordinates will start with the x coordinate and then the y coordinate. So the x coordinate in the x-axis is 4. So P has coordinates 4, and then in the y-axis, which is the vertical axis here, so the vertical axis, the y coordinate here is 3. So 3. So P has coordinates 4, 3. So we know that gradient is change in y over change in x. So in other words, we take the y coordinate of one point minus the y coordinate of the other point over the x coordinate of one point minus the x coordinate of the other point. So if I want to start with the y coordinate of p, the y coordinate of p is 3. So 3 minus the y coordinate of O is 0 over the x coordinate of P is 4 minus the x coordinate of O is 0. So the gradient therefore is 3 over 4. So in other words, you can see that gradient is equal to the ratio of this distance here and this one here. So if I have a line, I'm saying that gradient now is the ratio between this vertical distance and the horizontal distance. Students make mistakes where they take gradient equals to delta y over delta x. That one is fine. But they make mistake where they start, if for example they start with the y of p, so the y coordinate of p is 3, minus the y coordinate of O is 0, over. So instead of taking the x coordinate of p, which is 4, they take the x coordinate of 0 minus 4. So this one becomes wrong. Because we say that gradient is change in y over the corresponding change in x. So if you start with 3 minus 0, you must start again with 4 minus 0. If you start with 0 minus 3, the same thing, you must again start with over 0 minus 4. I hope that one is clear. So you can ask questions in the comment section where you need clarification. Don't forget to share this video, like, comment, and hit the subscription button below. Thank you.